areas, and it's called incident command system. There's logistics, right, to support the folks out there fighting the fire. There's the planning section that make the plans and the maps and all that type of stuff. There's the finance section that pay the bills. And then you have the incident command and general staff, and then you have where I work, which is operations, the folks that go out and do the work on the ground. So the job of the planning section is to develop, and I only brought a couple, but people can send this around too, is it what's called an IAP, or an incident action plan. It shows where everybody's working and who's assigned and what their assignment is and weather and all that kind of stuff, as well as a map package. Because of requests of the crews and because of the size of the fire, this is now, this is a record I think for me, 36 pages of maps to cover the entire fire. Very detailed. So we have what are called IAP maps, or what we would take out into the field, and then we have what you see on the board, which are briefing maps. Not really functional to take that out in your pocket. Again, 40,000 foot, more or less, column. And you can see where it condenses. The threats to, yes, the threats to the communities. Obviously, the path of the fire would impact Tuolumne first because of just proximity. Right now, at its current perimeter, it's about 5 miles away. There's a lot of contingency line in place. The teams have, both ours and the new team, have done a type of planning, which is the 24, the 48, and the 72. We put lines in that are 24 out, 48 out, and 72 out. So we've had, in essence, redundancy in these lines. Those lines are in place, but we don't have black or burned up against them yet. The idea is you just target of opportunity when the weather and everything lines up. You go in and you lay fire down along that line, it backs off, and in other words, it takes the fuel away from the fire's or the line's edge. So when the main fire meets it, it meets a huge line of not only what we constructed, but black, and it cannot continue. So you have several layers, and you have the fuel type change. I can't promise anything, obviously. This is showing extraordinary behavior. I'm very confident that the city of Tuolumne will be fine with the assets there and the aviation assets allocated. Should everybody be on a heightened level of concern? Absolutely. Should everybody be taking care of their yards and make sure that their vegetation abatement has been conducted? Should they probably talk with their family members and say, what's our plan? Where are we going to go if we have to go? It would be very appropriate, just for exercise only, talk about what those plans are. Talk about what would we take. Okay, believe it or not, it happened yet again when I was making notification of folks that had no idea how fast the fire was coming. These were folks along the 120. People get overwhelmed, and I understand that. It is overwhelming. There's ash falling out of the sky, there's smoke everywhere, it's chaos. That's not the time to be picking which types of things to take. Would I go through that preparation exercise? I definitely would. I definitely would. What I'm going to do now with the team is look at the first line of defense, which is holding the stuff well to the south, then falling back to the next one, and then ultimately to the Cottonwood Road, for those that are familiar with that. That helps a little bit of Tuolumne, but it really is a line of defense for access up to Twain, Harte, and to Leeward, and then up to 108. And what that's going to happen is that is going to be prepped, and you're going to have ridges to the south of that road that are going to be painted with the DC-10, and dozer lines constructed and burnout operations conducted. And I think now with the amount of assets we have, we're looking so much better than before. So much better.
Hey Todd, I'm Jocelyn's father. It's great to see you again. And Mark and your team is in our prayers. But the question I have for you before I leave is, there was 2 C-130s ready to rock. They were supposed to come out, but there was something about the money issue. Is that going to happen soon? Or are they still going to be on the top?
They've already flown.
No, the C-130s have?
Correct.
Okay.
The guard ships. We have not only C-130 guard ships, but we've got Black Hawk guard helicopters flying as well. Okay. Once we hit a preparedness level 5, and I won't go into the details of how you get there, we got there, that activates the military as well. So we pull those assets in. So the C-130s are the large cargo planes. They slide in a retardant delivery device in the back of those, and they paint as well. And then you have the helicopters that have the buckets that do water dropping jobs.
Do we still have a siren at the fire department that can wake us all up?
We have the siren on the roof. What we don't have is the air compressor connected to it to fire. So that's something we could look at if the town would like. It wouldn't be that hard to connect the plumbing back up and put the controls back in. Okay.
Since technology has caught up with us, and some of us have disconnected our landlines, and that also insulates us from reverse 911. So I think that something like this being reconnected would be a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll make that happen. I've heard, don't quote me again, someone would have to research it further to confirm it. There's a service you can sign up to have your cell phone have that same reverse 911 call to. I've heard that. I've not personally done it, but it's something that I think you sign up for through some other third-party type thing, and it rings down sends you a text message. I don't know what it does. But I think it'll notify you that way.
Just take the questions.
Yeah?
I'd like a little bit more detail behind Tuolumne. How far? I know you said 5 miles, but the detail, like, what do you speculate on if you were to get work to move to Tuolumne? How long would that take? Would that be like by tomorrow, 2 days?
To hit Tuolumne,
Yeah.
actually jump the Cottonwood
Yeah.
Road. Again, I can give you my guesstimate. It's days away because of what's now in front of it. Remember the day's growth that you've seen subsequent to yesterday and now today, what did it put in place? Is there wasn't anything out in front because we couldn't move fast enough and get out in front of it and engage people safely out in front of something moving at that velocity. So now that we've had more horsepower come in and more time to plan it and put them out there, now you've got these layers of defense that have been set up. Those will be embellished upon today and in the coming days. And those will be reinforced with the aerial assets and the other ground resources. I'll be honest with you, it has, as you've seen, this season has produced extreme potential. And that's what we always look at it as, its potential.
What's the status of Pine Mountain Lake Road here?
Pine Mountain Lake. The fire did come up the Tuolumne drainage. It did impact the area along Ferretti Road near Yosemite or Tuolumne Trails. If anybody's familiar with that camp that's there. Yesterday it did come up and sort of bump up against Clements Road where the stables are. But because it transitions out of the brush into the grass, they just painted a line and it went out right there. So not only is there a painted line on Groveland, but there's a line that leaves Groveland and drops down into the river, which locks the westerly progression down. So you will not see any westerly progression or any subsequent upslope runs into Groveland.
I have 2 questions. One
Yes.
is about the DC-10, two of them, and the other is about fighting fire at night. The DC-10s, I understand that they take off not around here, so how many times a day can they unload up here? And my second question is, how is fire fought at night?
Fire, okay, DC-10 first. DC-10, you're correct. It cannot land in Columbia. So it has to go to Stockton Anchor Base, or it has to go to McNeil in Sacramento. Turnaround time if you put it on what's called a load and return, you're looking at about an hour, hour and a half, depending if it needs to do fuel or who else is in queue and at a fill station. When it comes out though, it delivers such volume. Again, it's 3 times the amount of any other aircraft before it was put in service. So with both of those together, you can imagine not only the volume, but the density. And if you haven't seen it fly, it is a little nerve-wracking to see a plane of that size flying that low and that much coming out of it. But it creates such an incredible line of retardant. It is far superior to anything that we have. It's not cheap, but it's the right tool for the job. And at night, right? We do it the same, but we commit a little less resources and we go a little slower because of those unknown hazards that you can't see out in front of you. And in the timber model, everybody can guess what's the biggest one. It's the trees. We have killed a lot of firefighters through the years, not by flame or smoke or any of that, but by falling trees. And up in the timber model, that's happening all the time. So not only you have the fire-weakened trees from this incident, but then you have the trees from subsequent incidents that are still standing, and you get these extreme winds and stuff is snapping. And there's some, we call it hammers. Hammers are falling. And the crews are very nervous when that happens. And so it goes a little slower. What we tend to do at night, instead of committing so many ground resources, that's a great time for the bulldozers to go out and to make progress or continue what they started during the day. So the idea is divisions, we plan for 24-hour on the tracked equipment. We set up an order and make sure that those operators have relief operators. So one works during the day, one works during the night. The same machine is still pushing, just a different person. And we get 24-hour day construction. So once you get a lot of that in place, you can see how much line you can put down. And we're talking not one blade wide, we're talking dozer line the width of this building. And the problem that we have is if we don't have the air assets, which was before, not the case now, sometimes that line doesn't hold even that wide, just because of embers falling over it. But now we paint the green side of the line. So we put the line in, pre-treat the other side, so if anything goes over, it just lands and goes out. That's how we do it.
Again, on the Pine Mountain Lake side of this fire, I have clients up there that are calling me and asking them to only have knowledge over here with you guys. Guys in the firehouse have been very good in their information. So you're saying that they're painted Pine Mountain Lake and that subdivision's pretty good, so their opportunity to get into that subdivision and make it look like Oakland Hills is good, so they're not going to burn it?
Correct, correct. There's already, like I said, the line has been painted where it first came up and hit Ferretti. That wasn't even Pine Mountain Lake proper. The only place was yesterday afternoon, towards the end of shift, it came up and touched that Clements Road area, for those that know that subdivision or that community. Clements Road is out actually on the river side of Ferretti Road, not inside Pine Mountain Lake proper. Right, Ferretti Road leaves 120, circles back around, and grabs 120 again, right in Groveland proper, and the bulk of the Pine Mountain Lake is inside that arc. Well, there's another line. We didn't make it, it's just there, because it's paved. So you paint those roads on the green side as well. We look at those as fire breaks, no different than how we would look at hand line or dozer line that we make. Yes?
So, I work and live at Sugar Pine RV Park, so we're on the 108
Correct.
Sugar Pine Meadwalk corridor. And we taking this information and taking it to our residents. So it sounds like you're saying today it's a little more optimistic than it was yesterday.
I can tell you with all confidence, the amount of assets this team has now at its disposal is unbelievably different than what it was when we started. We have the focus of the entire West right now.
Okay. I mean, as far as
And
yesterday.
assets are in
it was-
place, yes.
Yesterday was get prepared to evacuate. So today it's a little more optimistic.
Correct.
That they're gonna stop it before it comes up. I mean, I understand Tuolumne City, but we're on that corridor. If it hits that forest line, it'd come up that way, but it sounds like
I would
it's,
love to guarantee, I can't do that. I would absolutely tell the citizens, be prepared,
okay,
but the likelihood of having to actually call the evacuation has diminished greatly.
thank you. Thank you.
What
Yes.
about air quality, the school children, those of us that have trouble breathing? Where do we check to see, okay, it's time to get out of here because I can't breathe in the morning? How do we know?
Well, I mean, that's personal preference. Then you have the Air Pollution Control District, I think, produces information like an air quality index.
Yeah.
A lot of the local news agencies do that, however, we don't really have a local.
I think so.
And my mother lode might have something. I honestly, I have not been tapped into any internet
Schools
for a
are
while.
canceled, right, for right now.
Yeah. There's no question the air quality is poor, and the only way to get out of it is to go north or south in the valley or get up in elevation north or south and get above it. And unfortunately, until we can, even if we stop forward progress today, you have so much interior burning and smoldering that's going to occur. There's going to be smoke production for a while. It's going to be here for a while. Yeah. Yes.
My grandmother just called me. She said that they're evacuating Tuolumne City. I don't know where she got that information, but that's not happening, right?
If that is happening, that's happening since I drove here, which would be very surprising to me.
Confirm me that right now, I just asked them.
What's that?
Well, no, they're trying to find out if that's true or not.
Okay, and here's the problem that this team, my team and the new team has, is a shortage of public information officers getting out and giving accurate information, and the folks in the social media world hearing one thing and transposing numbers, and then all of a sudden making up numbers, and it tends to blow everything way out of proportion. I would be unbelievably surprised. Now, would they say something like, you might want to be prepared, if air quality is impacting you, you might want to voluntarily move, and that's getting transposed into evacuation, and you see how that goes out into the network.
I heard it was changed from, the first report was Tuolumne City, it was changed to Tuolumne Camp. The comment about the evacuation.
Tuolumne Camp.
Yeah, apparently that's.
I do know that the fire moved and successfully defended around Camp Mather, Camp Tawonga, what's called Sawmill Mountain, San Jose Camp. We have had some losses, I will be perfectly honest. I have personally lost them on my division, but given the circumstances we've faced, it's been very, very minimal. And our safety record as a team has been phenomenal too. Very little injuries. Most of them are just heat related, just fatigue. Back.
So along those lines, how is the evacuation communicated?
It's communicated to you via the sheriff's office. That is the agency in charge of community notification and evacuation. The team works in conjunction. They have liaisons or agency reps that are right there with the team, and should that button need to be pushed, that's who you would expect information from, in the form of reverse 911, in the form of door-to-door and public announcements. Okay? Yeah.
We're in the Ponderosa Hills. Is that included in the Tuolumne City plan, or is that another area that would be planned on?
It's probably a secondary plan to the Tuolumne plan. Again, instead of dumping that many folks out of their homes and onto the road networks with no place to necessarily go, you can see that there should be a graduation of, or a sequential ordering of, because as a team, as a person, I don't care if it's a local fire here in town as a fire chief, if I say everybody get out, now I'm responsible for that. If I don't have a place for them to go and something happens, ultimately, you know, hey, and we have to consider that. Yeah, in the back.
According to mymotherload.com, the sheriff just issued an advisory evacuation for Tuolumne City and Ponderosa Hills.
Advisory, meaning be ready for those that might be overly concerned, those types of things. That's not mandatory, it's knocking at your door. And understand, law enforcement agencies and fire agencies have to be ahead of the curve, because if we wait till it's too late, for those that live in Ponderosa Hills, what would happen if we waited to the last minute? Yeah. Crash. We're trying to go in, you're trying to come out, it's Oakland Hills all over again. We don't want that, so we're ahead of the curve. We're notifying ahead of the curve, as best we can. Yes?
You'd mentioned Tuolumne Trails Camp. Did it get lost?
No.
It's okay.
No, but when I say it came up, it came to that, that's where the fire came up and touched the Groveland area first. But resources were there, they intercepted, cut line, yeah.
Good to hear.
It's got black around it now, but it's there.
So I have livestock off of U70 Road, south of Tuolumne City, or should I put them now?
If you have a place, I would advise it. Yeah, just save that extra
Because
tax.
it'd be more difficult if one's on
Correct.
evacuation. Okay.
Especially once you add the smoke impacts and traffic issues. Yeah, if you have a place, absolutely. Yes?
Is there a need, or is there possibly a need for volunteer assistance?
I haven't heard that need yet, but I'm sure the Red Cross would always love a hand. I can honestly say I've been so engaged in how this thing has progressed. I know shelters have been started. I didn't have time today to bring exact locations, but I think Motherlode Fairgrounds is one of them. Okay, and I'm sure mymotherlode.com and the Union Democrat, the news stations locally have already announced all that stuff. I don't get any radio reception out there either, so honestly don't know. Any other questions? I do have, again, the two maps. I spread it out into two just so you could have a little better scale, a little kind of idea, and you can see for yourself where the fire has parked. The infrared map is flying around. One little thing for map reading I want to point out, and I know it's going to be hard to see, but if you look even from a distance, you notice how it looks like a checkerboard. Okay, each one of those checkerboards is 1 square mile, or 640 acres. So if you look at the fire's edge, which is the red line, and the crosshatches indicating the black side, outside of that crosshatch is considered the green. You can now count how many miles